Hi, we are recording. And
Good.
for those of you who are on the Facebook Live, you know that this technology wasn't working for us, but thankfully I have Liz Duren here with us. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Duren. That's perfect. Yes.
Awesome. And we want to hear about your adoption story. Liz is an adoptee who
Yes.
found out later in life, a little bit later in life, not like it is today, where it's open adoption and people are more likely to know from the time that they are born that they're adopted. At least we hope so. Your story's a little different than that.
Yeah, no, I didn't find out until I was 15. My parents claim that they had tried to tell me when I was a very little girl, but they thought I was they thought I was starting to stutter. They thought I was self-conscious about it. And then they just didn't tell me again. But the weird thing about it, and I've talked to other adoptees in all the years that I've been living in this world, and I knew. I just knew I was adopted. And when I was 10 years old, we had a family portrait done. And I mean, honestly, this was the 70s. So we didn't go do family portraits. And it was the first one we'd ever done. And I just thought I looked so different from them. And then I thought, well, at 10, I thought, well, that explains everything because I feel different from them. So I started asking when I was 10, and they, for whatever their reasons were, chose to say, no, that's ridiculous. Of course you're not. And it would be years until I had the proof that I was.
You had suspected earlier, huh?
Yeah, I sure did. And I never gave it up. My father even showed me my birth certificate when I was 12 years old to get me to stop asking questions. And it just didn't quiet the demons or whatever was going on in my mind. I just knew it. I knew it. And so finally, when I was 15, I was old enough, 15 is a great age. Woo! But I was old enough to say, I know you're lying and you can't lie to me like this anymore. You've got to tell me the truth. And they finally did. And then I come from the South, just like any fancy Southern family, we never spoke of it again. They wouldn't answer my questions. They were like, now, you'll be fine. And I wasn't. I wasn't fine.
So let's back up a little bit from before you were told anything. When is the first time that you can remember feeling like, I don't know, something's going on here?
I would have to say it was in the third grade. And no one has ever asked me this before. And this is the thought that just popped into my head. When I was in the third grade, my name is Elizabeth, but I decided in the third grade that I wanted to be named Liz. And I don't know why that was so important to me, but it was. And that was the first struggle that we had. And I remember thinking, why can't they just let me be different? Why can't they just let me do what I want to do? And of course, that's not unusual for a little kid, but that's probably when I was like, but I'm not Elizabeth, I'm Liz. So maybe that was then.
Maybe.
Huh.
Okay. And then was it the next time really that it came to your head at that family portrait when you were 10?
Yes. That was
What happened at that family portrait?
I'm sorry?
What happened during that portrait?
Well, the portrait itself it was one of those ones where you all went to the church and you had your pictures taken for the directory. And when we got it back, literally, I remember looking at it with my mother and I said to her, I don't even look like you guys. I must be adopted. And you would think I had asked her if she was a virgin when she got married. She was so offended by that question.
Did you even ask a question or did you just kind of make a statement?
No, I asked straight out.
Okay.
And then when she told me that I wasn't, I went to my father with the same picture this very same day. And I said, look at this picture. I don't look like any of you people. I must be adopted. And he was like, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. No. And that planted a seed. And that seed grew without me even paying attention to it. I just knew that little 10-year-old girl knew she was being lied to and was not going to rest until she found out the truth.
Oh, that is so fascinating to me. There is
it's weird, but it was this. I'm I'm from South Carolina. My family are old Charleston, South Carolina people. And, you just didn't talk about unpleasant things. And to them, I mean, when you really kind of think about it, and I never want to say what either one of my mothers was feeling, but I know my adopted mother in 1968, when I was born, her job was to be a mom and a wife. And when it came to the point where they wanted a second child and that she couldn't do that job,
Mm.
it's hard for people to even understand now that you might feel like, oh, I can't have another child. But back then, that was hard for her.
That was her identity being challenged.
And then not knowing, without speculating, what my birth mother was going through. She was a young woman in South Carolina in 1967 who found herself in a very difficult situation.
So before we get to that, and I want to hear about what you know, I'm curious if you had known anyone who was adopted before you even brought that up.
Oh, it's funny. There was one kid, his name was Lee Orvin, and we used to say that he's adopted like he had a disease.
Mm-hmm. Wonder how that made him feel if he ever heard that, right?
Oh, I mean, poor Lee. Lee was one of those kids who had it kind of rough in school. But I know he was a perfectly likable, real sweet guy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what I guess he would have just, hit somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
but it was a whisper.
It was one of those phrases that was used a lot back then in the 70s and 80s when you wanted to make fun of your sister or brother. You made fun of them by using "you're adopted."
Oh, no, my children say that to each other today, all the time. They're all, yeah. But the funny thing was, my big brother, who was their biological child, never said that to me.
So, okay. So you clearly had this feeling like my identity is different than what I've always thought it to be.
Well,
My identity is different than what is surrounding me. You had this feeling, yeah.
Well, and just let me ask you, where are you from? Where am I talking? What state are you in?
Currently, I'm in Illinois. I'm in Chicago.
Okay.
I grew up in Cleveland.
The interesting thing about me and my identity was that being from an old Charleston, South Carolina family, I mean, Southerners can't meet without discussing who their family is. That's how we connect. Well, my grandfather was this fancy name, and like, oh, well, mine was too. Well, we must be cousins then. That's how Southerners meet. Like, who are you? Who are you people? Where are you from? And how'd you get here? Those are the questions. So I was very wrapped up in this Southern identity of I'm a Coleman, I'm a Butler, I'm a Legree. And when I finally found out that I was adopted, that was the biggest shock to me. Was I've lost my identity. I now cannot, and even to this day, there are clubs that you can't join, like Daughters of the American Revolution, if you're adopted.
Are you serious?
You have to have a bloodline. It's very, very important. So to be an adopted kid, oh no, I know a man who adopted an Asian little baby way before anybody else had. I mean, this was in the 70s, and she couldn't join like the cotillion because she wasn't a blood relation from the people who had started this cotillion.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's just the South. So for me, I mean, to find out at 15 that I was adopted, my identity crashes to the ground, and then I don't know who I'm going to find. And the worst thing that could have happened was if I had found somebody who wasn't from a good Southern family. And of course, if a mother who gave me up for adoption, surely she couldn't have been from the right family, or that would have never happened to her, which is the dumbest thing you'll ever hear in your life, because everybody, I mean, love is love. Your heart wants what you want. I mean, sex is a thing, even good people. So, I mean, just the whole me being adopted meant that my identity in the South could be somebody questionable.
Shame, yeah.
Shame.
Okay, so you thought, yes, shame.
That's the word. And I hate to use that word because it makes my birth mother angry when I say that word. But I mean, I was a teenager in 1980s. If I had gotten pregnant, I would have been ashamed because that's how my family would have looked at it.
Yeah, and I think even yeah, I think that's probably the same today in
Yeah,
many
well,
areas.
maybe. I don't know.
There are certain norms, right, that are expected societally,
Yeah.
the word. So you're now so you start questioning at 10,
Mhm.
and then it kind of gets pushed under the rug, and now you're 15 and you asked again.
Yeah. Well, I had asked all the time. I never really stopped. But at
Okay.
15, I just finally decided to just put him in a corner. And I just went to my father. I was really close with my father. He and I were good buddies. We were good pals. My mother and I had a real difficult relationship. I couldn't talk to my mother. Um, I don't know. It's a long story. If you ever, I mean, if you read the book, it's all take. I mean, you can understand how weird she was, but she and I were just not close, and I couldn't confide in her, and I couldn't go to her. But when I went to my dad and I said, not only do I think I'm adopted, but all of my friends' parents think I'm adopted too, and that's when he couldn't lie anymore. He was trapped. So that's when they had to tell me the truth. He had to tell me the truth. Mom and I never spoke of it. Not once, not one time did mom come and sit down and say, all right, what do you need to know? What are the questions? What are the problems?
And is that when he showed you your birth certificate?
No, he did that when I was 12 and I was still asking questions. That was his way of thinking he was going to shut me up. But at 15, he couldn't lie anymore. He had to tell me the truth. And then they had to deal with, well, they didn't really deal with anything. They thought, okay, well, she knows. It's like, is the sky blue? Yes. Okay, we're done.
So how did you feel when you found out the truth for the first time? Like when the words were actually said to you, even though internally you always knew?
Oh, I was completely devastated.
There a
And the
part
worst,
of you that was relieved?
I guess, relief would be a word, maybe, but no. You be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten an answer, and now I couldn't. I didn't get another no where I could go. They're still lying to me. Now I had to face a
No.
truth, and now there were no answers. Who was I? Who are my people? Where did I come from? How did I get here?
So
All those questions that we ask everyone we ever meet, I didn't have the answers to, and it was hard. And I couldn't go give it a goog, and I couldn't go to a library. There was nothing.
so
There
how
was.
and when did you start to put your story together?
I well, I didn't. I was a. I ended up becoming a very rebellious teenager because of that. And I kind of ran away from home when I was 19 into the arms of a young soldier. And I lived in Europe
Mm.
with him for many years. And so there was zero work, except I had the neat opportunity to meet a lot of people who were adopted or who had given away children. And so when I got back to America, when I was in my mid 20s, I just joined registries, and I didn't even know about that non-identifying information until I was 27. So I got that, and I just turned into a little detective. I took every line of that document and I dissected what they could be talking about in that paragraph, and everything that was redacted, I would count the characters to see how many words, how many letters were in the word that had been redacted, and so I could try to guess,
Can you
like
tell
where
us
my.
what you're talking about by the non-identifying information?
Well, it was information from the Children's Bureau of South Carolina.
Okay.
That told you exactly who your parents were and where they were from, but everything identifying was redacted,
Okay.
like with a marker, like.
Mm-hmm.
So getting it like some top secret FBI file, and it would say like, the mother name is blah blah, who lives in blah, who went to blah school and works at blah.
Nothing.
Really nothing, but I mean, you spend enough time with it and you really read into, because I got lucky. I didn't just get a narrative. I got all the caseworkers' files. So every meeting that she had with my birth mother, she summarized the meeting. Well, I met with Doohickey today, and she said that she's feeling anxious. And so we went over what was going to happen to the baby. And, here's were the questions that she asked. So I got to sort of glean information about who she was based on the questions that she asked and the physical description that they gave of her, because they talked about how fancy her clothes were and how refined she was, like how well educated.
Wow,
so really,
that's a lot of information, probably a lot more than people are given today.
really,
I mean, just in as much as, like, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't know that all of those files are shared, like the meetings between the social worker and whatever. I thought the birth certificate is shared and identifying information and where they're from, but all of that narrative,
yeah, it was pretty cool.
I think is really cool to really learn who she was, like what she must have been going through at that time without even hearing it from her. Like,
yes,
okay.
she was scared. I mean, you could tell from those documents that she was poised, that she was keeping it together, but she was scared. And she gave them a story that ended up not being true about having this long-term boyfriend, and they're just not ready to move forward. And by the time they figured out she was pregnant, it was too late to tell everyone, because if they got married now, everyone would talk, and that wasn't really true. But she did what she had to do to feel comfortable and to feel like she was doing the right thing. I mean, which she was. But yeah, she just kind of had to kind of make up a story, because I guess it was hard.
Yeah.
So, but even though she made up a story, it didn't make it. I mean, I got really close to finding her. I mean, I figured out what city she was from, and because they talked about how fancy she was, there was only one high school she could have gone to. So I took a road trip to the town that she lived in when I was in my early 30s, and I went to that high school, and I got that yearbook, and I made photocopies of all the women so that I could start looking. Deep down, I just knew she was going to look like me. I don't know why I felt that, but I always felt that. And I just figured if I found a woman who looked just like me, I'd find her. It didn't work, because
I was like, I had chills. I'm like, and?
Well, it didn't work because I looked like everybody. I'm like, oh, has brown hair and blue eyes at this high school. So you know what I did? I went to the senior superlatives page, and I found out who Miss Popular was, and I called Miss Popular, because I thought, if anybody got pregnant just outside of high school, I mean, because my mother was 20 when she got pregnant with me. So I'm like, I bet you in this little town, Miss Popular knows exactly who that is. And I called that woman, here it is, I'm 30 years old, and she knew who my mother was.
She knew, like, they all knew who got pregnant?
I called her, and I told her who I was. I said, I'm an adopted child. I'm looking for my birth mother. She was in your high school graduating class. And would you know if any woman, any of your friends got pregnant just 2 years out of high school? And she said, yep, I sure do. And I said, well, who is it? And she goes, I'm not going to tell you, because I don't know that she wants to be found. And she goes, but let me ask you a question.
Fair enough. Gotta respect that. I said, there's a respectable component around that. Okay.
Yeah, oh, no, and I totally and she said, but before I even go forward, she's like, what color are your eyes? And I said, they're blue, because I've got big old blue eyes. And I said, does this woman have blue eyes? And she said, oh, she has beautiful blue eyes. So she offered to call her for me and say, hey, this girl, I've gotten this weird phone call from this girl who's looking for maybe one of our friends.
Okay.
Yeah, so she called her and asked her, but my birth mother said no, that it wasn't her, or that she didn't know anybody. So that was a dead end right there. But that's as close as I got on my own.
Okay.
Before I finally hired a private investigator.
Okay.
And they and I don't know.
I can't wait to read your book.
Oh no, it's there are a lot of twists and turns, and a lot happens, because just because you know who a birth mother is doesn't mean you're going to meet them. doesn't mean that they're ready, doesn't mean that you're ready. And just because you meet them doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfect.
Okay, so I don't want you, I want people to get your book.
Yeah.
Tell me this, did you ever reunite with her?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't wait to read and find out how. I see you getting emotional. I'm getting emotional. What are those emotions about?
Regret that that we didn't meet properly. I think that going into a reunion, I think it's really a good idea to have help. You can't just stumble into this and think that, oh, now I've got the mom that I always wanted, or I've got the child that I finally get my child back. There's so many emotions, and everybody has different ones. And I think my birth mother and I mean, our meeting was great, but it wasn't, I never got that Oprah, here's your mama. I never got the run into the arms and the hugs and the cries that I really I thought I needed. I got the, wow, it's so nice to meet you. Sit down, let's talk. And it wasn't, and it just wasn't everything that I wanted it to be. And she had grown children. I had young children, and my situation is just also so unique because my adopted parents lied to me for so long, and then never wanted to talk about it. And then my birth mother didn't really want to talk about it, and also kind of lied to me, trying to protect me, I think, or just not being ready to deal with the whole thing herself. So I mean, I still have a relationship with her today. Is it the one that I want? No, not at all. But she's there, and I know she cares about me. I know she loves me.
What about your parents?
My parents?
Mm-hmm.
They have both passed away now.
Sorry.
Daddy, I hadn't met my birth mother before Daddy died, but Daddy was really he was really quite supportive about it, and he always wanted to meet her, and so he could thank her. My adopted mother never really wanted to talk about it. There were several times when my birth mother came to visit, and I would call Mom, and I would say, hey, you want to meet her? I can bring her over. And she said, no, it would be too emotional, too hard for her. Which was fine. I mean, I understand that too. So
it's a lot of layers, and
yeah.
It's interesting because I would imagine that most reunions don't end up being the fantasy that is you played out in your head so many times.
Yes. It's just so much emotion, and I needed more from her than she had the ability to give. I think too, having her own grown children that she loves dearly, and they're wonderful, wonderful people. But I think it was hard for her to, have me in their life without them being jealous of me or worrying about what I wanted. It's hard.
Do you watch Grey's Anatomy or This Is Us?
No, but I've always wanted to watch This Is Us. But I missed the Grey's Anatomy train, so I never jumped on it.
Oh, okay.
I want to watch that.
They recently had, not too long ago on Grey's Anatomy, an episode where one of the main characters meets her birth mom, and it doesn't quite go the way she had hoped, and it put her in a tailspin. But I thought it was a really interesting, and it's so nice for me to see. It's nice that there are some TV shows that are finally getting it right.
Yeah. Although, I watch so many things, and it's always like some adoption story, and I'm like, oh, it always goes back to adoption. There was some totally random thing I was watching the other day, and it turns out they were adopted. I'm like,
This is good. You should add that to your list. What I would love to know from you is, what would you tell I mean, obviously adoption has changed so much since
Yeah.
when you were adopted. And what would you tell hopeful adoptive parents today going through the adoption journey, um, from your perspective about what we could do right? What, I don't know, what message would you like to send to adoptive parents and hopeful adoptive parents?
I think about this, and then I always think, who am I to say these things? But the one thing I think of is that love is infinite, and your child can love you as its adoptive parents and love their birth parents, and there's no competition there. It's not. I sometimes think my parents might have been afraid that if I met my birth mother, I'd like her better or I'd want to be with her more. And I could love them both. Oh, I could love all of them at the exact same time, the exact same way. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still. I think us as adopted children understand that our parents who kissed our boo-boos and tucked us in at night and bought us our school supplies, those are our parents, and they always will be. And the adoptive parent is just a piece of that puzzle that you really need.
Yes.
And it answers all those questions to ultimately become the best person that you can possibly be. I always equate it to getting married. I love my husband at the same time I love my parents. I can start my own family and they'll never go away. So I just think any jealousy or fear is unnecessary.
I think that is an amazing message to send. And it just so happens that on This Is Us this past week, that was it. That was the exact thing that just happened in This Is Us. I'm not kidding. Last episode. Spoiler alert. Last episode.
I gotta go watch TV.
Yeah, that's crazy that you said that. The other thing I guess I would ask you is, I don't know the whole backstory. I'm going to read it in the book, but of the story around your adoption and why she placed and if what all the things were. But I was in a discussion recently about the right of an adoptee to know their entire story, even if it's painful. Even if it's painful, even if it's messy, even if it's, versus the adoptive parent trying to quote unquote protect by leaving out parts of their story. Now, I'm not saying when they're a child, tell them all,
right. Oh, clearly.
all age appropriate. But I'm wondering your thoughts around that.
Life is super messy. And I think, no, I mean, you could have been kept by those people and been in that messy situation and known all of that. The fact that, as an adult now, you are where you are in life, the mess that created, you're the innocent product of the mess that brought you into existence. So none of that is your fault, and none of that is, but I do agree that what messy or no, it needs to come out. Yeah, everything.
Awesome.
And what if you don't get the whole truth, and then one day you do somehow find out about it from, like, if you reunite with these people somehow and some relative comes and tells you, and then you're shocked and then you feel betrayed. That
it's not so far-fetched these days.
I'm sorry?
I said it's not so far-fetched these days for that to happen.
I mean, that's how some of my friends found out they were adopted, because some relative said, "We were adopted." It happens. So yeah, I mean, there's never anything wrong with being honest.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's the lies that get you in the trouble.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing all that you shared. And I purposefully cut you off because I do want to go read it. And I want other people to go read it too. So tell us how we can get our hands on your book.
You can go to Amazon. You can search by my name. It's always easiest, Liz Butler Duren. It'll pop right up. You can get, an ebook or a regular one. I would love to have people read it. I love it when people contact me and want to share their stories and chit chat. It's been a real pleasure. I've also turned this book into a one-woman show.
Oh, Love it.
it premiered a year ago in Charleston, and then it got picked up again for our Spoleto Festival, our big arts festival in the spring. So it was very well received, and so I'll be taking that on the road here pretty soon.
Wow. Well, what's the name of your book?
It's called All About You, an Adopted Child's Memoir.
Awesome.
So yeah, check it out. It was a labor of love, and you know, you write a book about your feelings, and then you have to deal with everybody else's feelings about it. So I was like, oh, that's hard, but it was worth it. No matter what came from me writing this book, it was worth it.
That's incredible. If you ever bring it to Chicago, or if you'd like me to help you bring it to Chicago, I don't know how I would do it, but I could help make it happen, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, we're looking at festivals. That's one of the things that we're like, arts festivals, to bring it as a play. And then as, because it's just an hour. So as it makes a very interesting speaking engagement, because it's kind of like I just do a 1 hour, it's like stand up almost kind of thing. And you just kind of tell the story. And it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. And we're having a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, I've been thinking, I'm supposed to be interviewed for a TED Talk in January for Charleston. So, I mean, we'll see what kind of happens from there. But I'd like to
Be on the lookout, everyone, for Liz Butler Duren. She's taking it to the big league.
on the road.
Well, thank you so much.